There's not that many ways you can make $1 billion in a year, and crypto is one of the few.
If you hold cryptocurrency, 3 big events are happening today that you should know. And we'll get to Richard Hart and the fraud allegations from the SEC. But before that, the biggest news. Coinbase CEO says the SEC wanted all assets except Bitcoin delisted.
Coinbase Chief Executive Officer Brian Armstrong revealing that the crypto exchange received more than a Wells notice from the Securities and Exchange Commission before the agency sued the company for allegedly ignoring requirements to register with the SEC. According to the Financial Times, the SEC asked Coinbase to halt all trading in cryptocurrencies aside from Bitcoin. Coinbase's Armstrong said the inquiry would have solidified, quote, an end of the crypto industry in the U.S.
So this is much, much bigger than we initially realized, as per this report from the Financial Times. In this new statement from Brian Armstrong, he said, they came to us and they said, we believe every asset other than Bitcoin is a security. And we said, well, how are you coming to that conclusion? Because that's not our interpretation of the law. And they said, we're not going to explain it to you. You need to delist every asset other than Bitcoin.
And then something shifted about a year ago. A totally different tone started to happen. And we kind of got this information from the SEC that, well, actually, we think everything other than Bitcoin is a security.
And just looking at the numbers that Coinbase filed with the SEC before they went public, non-Bitcoin crypto assets are 55% of Coinbase Custody's business and 2/3 of its transaction revenue and trading volume. And today, the same clownish SEC that approved the company's IPO basically said, you need to stop doing the majority of your business or we'll sue you. Now, many of you are probably wondering about the bald token rug pull because this was on Coinbase's blockchain, the Base blockchain. But breaking news as of this morning, the US SEC just sued Richard Hart, as well as his projects Hex and Pulsechain, on unregistered securities and fraud allegations. So here is that official document from the SEC suing Richard Schuler, that's his real name, aka Richard Hart, and alleging that he raised over $1 billion across the 3 different unregistered securities offerings, that's Hex, Pulsechain, and PulseX, beginning in 2019.
There's not that many ways you can make $1 billion in a year, and crypto is one of the few. The founder of XRP was the richest man in the world in 2017, and one of us might be the richest man in the world in 2020. We'll see.
And to go further, here is footage of Richard Hart explaining the Hex crowd sale back in the day and how much money he potentially is going to make.
And then there's an empty bucket, and people put Ethereum into that bucket. And then if you hold 10% of the Ethereum bucket, you get 10% of the Hex bucket. And the buckets empty out. Next day, new buckets.
You lose your ETH.
I lose my ETH.
And you get Hex.
But who gets the ETH?
You're not supposed to know that.
Okay, then in the...
Tons of economic energy in the form of ETH is going to come into the adoption amplifier. Now, mind you, if you're getting a contract that gets $4 million of economic energy in it per day for 350 days, you're looking at about $1.2 billion. Okay, that's a lot of money. Nice. Whoever holds the keys to that must be a happy dude, right?
Now, while these unregistered securities charges, not that big a surprise, knowing the SEC, knowing Richard Hart, but these fraud allegations, to me, are much, much bigger. Hart also defrauded his investors, the SEC alleges, in a lawsuit on Monday, by using investor funds for personal goods.
I could have my Gucci on.
In a direct statement from the SEC, Hart continually touted these investments, meaning Hex, Pulse, PulseX, touted them as pathways to grandiose wealth for investors, claiming that Hex, for example, was built to be the highest appreciating asset class that ever existed in the history of man.
Can you share your vision roadmap of Hex going to $1 million per coin, please? So it's very mind-warping and very weird to say that you could see each Hex be worth $1 million. It's really weird. But then I look at the chart. And the chart literally is pointed to $1 million. And this is with like a conservative line.
And the lawsuit goes on to say, although Hart claimed these investments were for the vague purpose of supporting free speech, he did not disclose that he was using those millions of dollars of Pulsechain investor funds to buy luxury goods for himself.
Hi, Richard Hart. I own the world's largest diamond. You do not, okay? I don't care what you do. I don't care how hard you work. You can't own the world's diamond. I own it. Me. You don't. Get that right. I got $10 million of wristwatches. I got $3 million in cars. I got the 1,000 horsepower Ferrari. I had the most expensive Rolexes ever made. And I'm doing the world's largest free airdrop, Pulsechain.com.
And in summation, here are the 4 key allegations from the SEC. Number 1, Hart raised over $1 billion by selling tokens for his projects. Number 2, misuse of his control of the projects, making suggestive statements about potential increases in their value. Number 3 allegation was fraud or misappropriation of specifically $12 million in investor funds for personal luxury items, and they list the items that would equal $12 million. And number 4, marketing a staking feature to incentivize token holders to lock up tokens in exchange for more tokens. So these are the 4 allegations Richard now has to fight. Most shockingly, Richard Hart never incorporated a legal entity to carry out the token offering, so he is personally on the hook for all of the above.
How will Pulsechain and PulseX go with global regulation with the SEC? God. Hey man, did you know the SEC said that EOS was an unregistered security? And did you know that EOS settled with the SEC for $27 million and got an exemption from the SEC to continue doing business? I like it when I hear people say things like, SEC is going to lock people up. The SEC is not a criminal enforcement agency and cannot lock you up and does not have agents to kick in your door and lock you up. They are not the Department of Justice. The most they can do is file civil lawsuits and or refer things to the Department of Justice so that they can do their job.
And many of you have been asking me about this. Bald token plunges 90% as developer pulls liquidity, i.e. a rug pull, and Bald launched a little over 24 hours ago and has attracted massive hype and millions in capital to the Base blockchain, which is Coinbase's blockchain. At its peak and how much money is now gone, Bald held as much as $32 million in Ethereum during European morning hours on Monday. And what is Base? What is this Coinbase blockchain? Well, Base was built by crypto exchange Coinbase on Optimism OP Stack, launched its testnet in January, and just opened to builders in mid-July. Traction has been scant thus far, except for Sunday, when the likes of Bald led a sudden rush in capital and users to the blockchain. So Bald is now dead, and major news for Ethereum, Celo proposal to migrate to Ethereum Layer 2 passes. So this is a huge win for Ethereum because Celo, which was its own independent L1 blockchain, has now chosen to become an ETH scaler and ETH L2. The reason? Well, they want better security, liquidity, and a bigger development community. And this passed by an overwhelming majority. According to the proposal page, there was 131 votes in total, with 128 of those votes voting in favor of the transition. Be sure to click subscribe for daily updates keeping you informed, and like always, see you tomorrow.